Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Glenn Cunningham. I am the president-elect of the Texas Trial Lawyers Association, and I appreciate the opportunity to testify in favor of House Bill 719. By way of background, I've been a practicing medical malpractice attorney in San Antonio for the last 27 years. I spent the first 11 years of my practice representing doctors in hospitals and medical negligence cases, and I've spent the last 16 years of my practice holding healthcare providers accountable for their misconduct, which has injured or killed a patient. And as you know, that's the purpose of the tort system, to hold wrongdoers accountable for their misconduct by providing fair and meaningful compensation to their victims, which then improves the quality of care for everyone, one case at a time. Now, don't get me wrong, I do not support the concept of caps on damages, and I firmly and strongly believe that caps on damages should be left to the sole discretion of the jury, as they are in every other civil cause of action in the state of Texas. But that being said, I applaud the wisdom of the 1977 Texas legislature when they enacted the medical malpractice death cap in Texas, which is now codified at 74.303 of the Texas Civil Practice and Remedies Code. The 1977 Texas legislature understood the concept of the time value of money. They recognized that the purchasing power of $500,000, which was the death cap in 1977, was not going to be the same purchasing power in 2017, 40 years later. And since a fundamental tenet of the tort system is provide for fair and meaningful compensation to the victim, the Texas legislature in 1977 tied the $500,000 death cap to the consumer price index, such that now, 40 years later in 2017, that $500,000 death cap has risen, kept pace with inflation, and is now approximately $1.9 million. Representative Wu's bill would tie the medical malpractice non-economic damage cap simply to the same index, the same consumer price index that the death cap is tied to. His language, proposed language, mirrors the death cap inflationary index contained in 74.303. Since 2003, as explained by Representative Wu, the hard flat cap on non-economic damages of $250,000 has eroded each and every year, such that now it is worth approximately $190,000. So I pose this: if the Texas legislature in 2003 thought that $250,000 was adequate compensation for non-economic damages, then how is it that $190,000 in true purchasing power today is fair and just compensation? What could possibly be the public policy rationale for the true value of fair compensation to erode and diminish every year? Now, according to recent reports, medical malpractice is now the third leading cause of death in this country, subject only to heart disease and cancer. By the Institute of Medicine's own statistics, in excess of 190,000 people a year, and more likely, according to recent reports, 400,000 people a year die as a result of medical errors in this country every year. That is as if the entire population of a city like Orlando, Florida, dies from medical malpractice every year. And in the midst of what can only be described as a medical malpractice death crisis in this country, one would think that we would be interested in holding healthcare providers fully responsible and accountable for their wrongdoing and ensuring that their victims receive fair and just compensation. But in Texas, the value of compensation that victims receive for non-economic damages, things like impairment, disfigurement, pain and suffering, mental anguish, erodes every year. Now, also, according to my research...
You're about finished, or...
one more paragraph.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, Chairman Smithy.
That's fine.
According to my research, there are only 4 states in the country that have a hard, flat cap as low as Texas's $250,000 cap. Those are California, Kansas, Montana, and Texas. And of the 33 states that have caps on med mal damages, all others either have a higher cap or their cap is tied to an inflationary index like the one proposed by Representative Wu. Accordingly, Texas is an outlier and should join the mainstream of states that are striving to provide fair and just compensation for victims of medical negligence. That's all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Cunningham? Yes, Mr. Gutierrez?
These cases are expensive to litigate, are they not?
No question.
You have experts that you hire?
Experts that you hire, usually more than one expert, depending upon the complexity of the case.
What has been the net effect since we had tort reform to the amount of cases that have been brought to our court system?
Immediately after the advent of tort reform in 2003, the number of filings decreased by about 60%. As of last year, there was a slight spike, but it's my understanding that med mal cases represent merely 5% of the civil litigation cases that are filed each year in Texas.
So what has been the net effect to lawyers that are still practicing in this area? Essentially, they're having to find cases that are, how shall I say this? I don't want to use the word slam dunk, but what I'm getting at is that there are a lot of people that are not getting access to the courthouse because of tort reform, because those cases are so darned expensive. Is that not correct?
That's exactly true, and every year it gets worse because the net value of what a case is worth to one of my clients diminishes. And how can I look at a mother who has lost her child as a result of medical negligence and explain to this mother that, you know, it sure is a shame that your child died in 2017 when the net effect of the cap is $190,000, as opposed to dying 14 years ago when, although it was an arbitrary and capricious number of $250,000, at least it was a true $250,000. So in my practice, all of my costs have risen in the last 14 years, as has every cost of goods and services in this country. Hence the benefit of tying it to the consumer price index. The only thing that hasn't increased, along with the consumer price index and inflation, is this damage cap, which in fact has eroded by $60,000 in the last 14 years.
And we have these caps, and you would think that a reciprocal effect would be that insurance companies and doctors that are negligent, and their insurance companies that back them, you think they would just pay these claims at these lower values, but they're not, are they?
No, these all medical malpractice cases are fiercely litigated in my experience, and I've been doing this for 27 years on both sides of the docket.
Well, I thought these things were so bad when we started them. I was just a kid, a young lawyer when we voted these in, but I think that maybe it's a first step in the right direction, but I think that we shouldn't have caps at all. But thank you again.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you for being here.